Can I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda? Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chris. All in favor? Contrary minded? All right, thank you. Can I get a declaration of conflict of interests by anyone? None being flagged, we will move on. The first item we have for approval is the consent agenda. This includes the draft minutes of the open session of April 16th, as well as the development project dashboards. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I move.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you for the second. Any discussion? Thank you, Andrew. Any discussion? All in favor? Contrary minded? And passed. The next item we have is the Waterfront Innovation Center. I'm going to pass that over to Meg for the presentation. Thank you, Meg.
Thanks, Maz. Thanks, Maz, and good morning, everyone. Angela Lee, one of our development managers, is going to take us through, and I think Christina is going to input on this as well. One of the projects, if you recall, IREC had asked us to present at every quarter one of the other projects that we're working on, not related to Quayside, just to give some background. So this one is the Waterfront Innovation Center, and Angela, do you want to kick it off?
Sorry, I'm muting. I think Christina was going to kick off the framework slide, and then.
Yeah. So why don't we go to that slide, and Christina, it's yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to provide a little bit of context around the Waterfront Innovation Center and why we actually saw this as an important piece to add into what was happening in the East Bayfront. The initiative around the Innovation Center goes right back into the East Bayfront Precinct Plan and the employment strategy that was contained therein, which called for the creation of 8,000 new jobs, 75% of which would be around the ICT cluster. And our initial focus really to foster this was in providing enabling infrastructure for key industries that we thought could be drawn to the East Bayfront area. As we began to think about the Innovation Center, we looked at a number of key questions around how we could help to catalyze industries that were already a part of Toronto's economic success, and looking at where there would be potential success or potential gaps in the existing innovation infrastructure within the city of Toronto, the incubators and accelerators and so on, to make sure that we were not cannibalizing what was already a strength within Toronto, but rather adding something that would be unique in the waterfront. Thinking forward on that, we were trying to think about also how we could sustain an innovation center that we would expect to be fully privately funded, which was a bit unique compared to those other spaces that we traditionally think of, like Mars and the DMZ and so on, which rely on a significant amount of public funding to be able to be sustained. What had begun to emerge was this concept of the innovation corridor, and that really rests on the strength of Toronto's visual storytellers and creative industries, including film, television, animation, production, post-production, and the technology to support those industries. This is anchored by Chorus in the East Bayfront and advances along into the Portlands, obviously, with the film district there as well. Waterfront Toronto, at the same time as beginning the process to undertake the RFP for the Innovation Centre, was working alongside potential tenants to help curate a roster of potential tenants that would fall into what we classified selected innovation uses. And that's actually been provided, that listing of what qualifies as a selected innovation use, as an appendix to the presentation that you're seeing here today. Many of the prospective tenants, while they didn't end up in the Innovation Center, have located into the East Bayfront area or within the waterfront. And I'll just focus it on the academic cluster for right now, but then Angela will speak to some of the broader industries that have come down there. But when you look at the academic cluster that has come to the waterfront, you have George Brown College, which had started their migration down to the waterfront with their health campus, but they've now moved to their design school, they're moving their technology school, the Institute Without Boundaries, all to the East Bayfront neighborhood. OCAD has a presence there in the Daniels building, which is their campus for the connected world, which looks at how digital and city building coexist. And the French University has recently announced that they're also coming down to the East Bayfront with a similar focus on city building. The University of Toronto is going to become a tenant within the Waterfront Innovation Center through a partnership with the Mars Discovery District. So this is an exciting addition to the Innovation Center family. WPP, as many of you know, was announced as the anchor tenant in 2018. Consistent with our agreements with Menkes, this was subject to Waterfront Toronto's approval. And while WPP has a significant legacy in traditional advertising, which would not be defined as a selected innovation use, many of the sub-brands that are being consolidated into that space do focus specifically on areas classified as a selected innovation use, including application development and mobile interfaces, experiential design, inclusive digital design, commercial development, and so on. The review of the proposed space utilization revealed that approximately 81% of the space that WPP was proposing to become a tenant of would qualify within that definition, and therefore the minimum leasing thresholds were met. With the University of Toronto and Mars partnership, we're encouraged that not only will they be the tenants, but they will also be providing programming support to help draw further innovation into the space, but also help to attract growth and scale up stage companies that will support the original vision of the WIC. So Angela, I'll hand that off to you to carry forward.
Sure, thanks, Christina. I know, can you flip to, yeah, so this is the just graphic of the Waterfront Toronto's projects in East Bayfront, what's been built and what are future projects. So in addition to the academic cluster Christina talked to, Waterfront Toronto has completed some few mixed-use development deals in East Bayfront. First is of course, the Bayside project with Hines, which is about 2 million square feet of mixed-use residential and commercial development. There's the Mon transaction with Great Golf, which is a mixed-use residential, and of course, the Waterfront Innovation Center. So, I'm just gonna recap on some of the objectives Waterfront Toronto had in the for the Innovation Center. The Innovation Center is directly linked to the implementation of the employment strategy that was established for the East Bayfront precinct. The Innovation Center, one of the main objectives will be to create an anchor for a broader innovation cluster that promotes collaboration and leverages Waterfront Toronto's investments in a high quality public realm and advanced technology infrastructure. We really focus on attracting a developer who can deliver and lease out a high quality purpose-built development that will facilitate and showcase design, innovation, and collaboration among clients, particularly in those key opportunity areas Christina discussed, such as digital media, advanced visualization, R&D, and educational institutions. The Waterfront Innovation Center is not intended to focus on early stage companies, typically found in a accelerator or incubator model, but really we're aiming to accommodate more established, mature companies that have common interests and are seeking a collaborative environment. And Innovation Center typically houses an anchor user or a selected collection of tenants whose areas of focus and businesses are aligned in productive and creative ways. The Innovation Center could also attract tenants that are already established within the marketplace, but are seeking a new environment in proximity to the anchors such as Chorus and Pinewood Studios, with potential for a cluster of digital media excellence. And then, of course, finally, objectives would also included excellence in design, sustainability, and provide financial returns to Waterfront Toronto and the city. Aino, can you flip to the next page? So that was just a quick recap of the Innovation Center. If there's any questions or comments.
So Maz, I don't think we're gonna go through the whole thing, so we'll just take questions at this point.
It's Patrick. I just had a quick question on the principles of participation in the innovation corridor. What were the foundational principles behind the inclusion of a company or exclusion of a company?
So Patrick, getting back to what we were looking at in terms of how we could complement what was already happening within the area, we looked at defining specific industries that were priority areas that were already clustering down there, like the film, television production kind of uses. And those were defined out. You'll note the selected innovation uses companies or sorry, industry fields that are actually noted in the back, and those had a fairly broad range. We did want to be reflective of what was in the East Bayfront Precinct Plan, which had a bit more of a broad brush with regards to information and communications technology, but while at the same time focusing in on industries that were significantly growing in the waterfront.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Can you elaborate a bit more on the privately funded aspect of the Innovation Center, please?
Angela, did you want me to take that one too?
Well, I think I can take it, and then if you want to jump in, the Menke's paid market price for the Innovation Center, and we did our due diligence, and there was no other in terms of Waterfront Toronto funding into that development.
It's Meg, I'm just going to jump really quickly in there. We had wanted to make sure that we were not imposing on the public purse for this project. And in fact, when we did our due diligence, appraisals, et cetera, we got better than market for the ground lease. And also to note that we got paid up front with a lump sum payment from Menkes rather than payments every year over the 99-year ground lease because we needed to monetize the income stream. And actually that turned out to be better than market. So we just wanted to make sure, as I mentioned, that the other incubators required government funding. This wasn't meant to be that. That wasn't really our intended role. So we wanted to make sure that this was a commercial deal that a private developer would do. That help?
Yeah, that is helpful. What is the situation for ongoing annual operations? Because that's usually where these projects run into challenges. Are the tenants covering all the expenses?
Our instructions to and our deal with Menkes is that they manage the project. So we don't have any ongoing input in terms of rent supplements or any operations or anything like that. I don't know, Angela, Christina, if you want to add to that.
No, I don't believe the Menkes has any rent supplements. I mean, they're depending on the specific tenants that go in. If there was a smaller educational facility that wants to be a tenant, or some kind of think tank, they could apply for funding themselves to offset their costs. But I don't believe it's not part of our deal with Menkes for additional funding to fund operations.
But I think the question was directly, do we have any legal obligations to cover any supplements? And the answer, I think, is no to that.
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. And you're satisfied with the business plan behind it all through Menkes? Has it been transparent?
Yeah, so they're one of the key that's a little bit different about the Waterfront Innovation Center is that level of innovation use we required as in the RFP. So the Waterfront Innovation Center, 60% of the space must comply with these selected innovation use that we have in our agreement with Menkes. And so what we wanted to make sure that was sustainable. So some of the conditions is they had to have 60% of the center lease, and 60% of that 60% has to meet with the innovation use before they can start construction. And then after that, and then ongoing, the 60% innovation use criteria is going to be applied to this space for 15 years. So we wanted to, ensure that the quantum of innovation use was satisfied, and then also was sustained for a reasonable amount of time frame.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the responses. Any further questions before we move on to our next item?
I'm good,
Okay,
thanks.
thank you. We are now going into closed session. Thank you. We're now moving into closed session. If I get a motion to go into closed session, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you,
Move,
Andrew.
Libby.
So the matter arising from the in-camera session is the approval of the consent agenda. And that was Jack who moved it. Can I get a second approving that, please? Thank you, Chris. All in favor? Contrary minded? All right, those minutes have been, that consent agenda has been passed. There are no other matters arising for this meeting. If I can get a motion to terminate, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
So Jack.
Thank you, Jack, for seconding.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone.